The shooting range. In this episode, pages of history, Japan's forgotten bomber, tactics and strategy, playing infantry fighting vehicles, and metal beasts, Israeli Leopard. Today we'd like to continue talking about the new IFVs brought to the game by the Seek and Destroy update. Our next highlight is the Israeli Namer. Its name is composed of the words APC and Merkava, but it can also mean leopard in Hebrew. Yeah, right, another one. The Israeli main battle tank's most notable feature has always been the frontal placement of the engine compartment. It's an unusual solution for a tank that looks right at home in an infantry fighting vehicle. This machine has an engine with 1,200 horsepower. While it surely is an outstanding number for an IFV, you should also keep in mind that it weighs a whopping 60 tons. For this class, it's pretty absurd. The vehicle can reach a top speed of 54 kilometers an hour going forward and go 23 in reverse. Nothing to write home about, of course, but don't expect mobility issues anyway, since it's good enough to move around the map. The impressive mass must bring something in return, right? Well, yeah. The Namer is one of the best protected vehicles in its class. Its composite armor in the front can even stop MBT shells in some situations. And while it's not reliable enough to tank every shot, the overall survivability is still beyond compare. You can see it most clearly when dueling other IFVs. The Israeli vehicle's armor is basically an impenetrable fortress for most enemy autocannons. That's why it can win pretty much any fight with a competitor. In the firepower department, the Namer offers a familiar choice. Its main caliber is a two-plane stabilized 30mm autocannon with exemplary elevation angles between -20 and +60 degrees. The main shell is a fin-stabilized discarding sabot that can penetrate more than 100mm of armor. There's also a missile launcher that can shoot the fire and forget Spike ATGMs. We can't call them the best for close-range combat on the ground, but they're a great tool against helicopters that get too close to the fight down below. We'd say the best firing advantage comes from the unmanned turret with amazing depression angles. You can use it to deliver accurate fire from hills while your hull is completely obscured by the landscape. The Namer also comes with a heap of bells and whistles. There's smoke launchers and ESS, thermals for both the gunner and the commander, an LWR and a laser rangefinder, a recon drone, and even commander gun controls. Basically, anything a true top IFV would ever need. Here's a Japanese coast-based naval torpedo bomber called the P-1Y-1 Ginga, which means the Milky Way. Allied reporting name, Francis. Even on the outside, it's a true engineering marvel. Look at this nimble fighter hull, a high aspect ratio, low drag wing. You'd expect to see that on a record setter or some high altitude interceptor, not a regular bomber. But then you might ask, tell me more about this aircraft. And even the most seasoned history buffs are unlikely to remember more than just the name, some performance charts, and maybe numbers produced. Most of them would only recall a short resume. Produced too late, had little effect on the war. An inquiring mind would start digging for extra data, documents, books, memoirs, but they'll find little to nothing. Why? Well, no one really knows. But we can deduce a theory if we follow the history of this plane's development and mass production. It all began in the spring of 1940, almost at the same time as the famous Zero, with Miki Tadanao heading the project. By early 1941, the Yokosuka Naval Air Technical Arsenal was ready to build the first prototype of the future Ginga. It was still a year before Pearl Harbor, which casts huge doubt onto the produced too late statement. But why did the first Ginga only make its maiden flight in the summer of 1943? The answer's simple. It was missing its engines. The 18-cylinder Nakajima Homares were taking too much effort and time. So when they were finally ready, the Army and the Navy fought tooth and nail for each copy made. It wasn't just bombers that needed the new motors. The newest Ki-84 and Shiden fighters were lining up for them too. The engineers had foreseen the issue and included an option to use the radial Nakajima Mamoru and Mitsubishi Kasei engines as well. Those only had 14 cylinders, but their total volume and power was the same as what the Homare had. So why didn't the new bomber use those alternatives to fly? Well, the command would have none of it. You either wait, they said, or don't fly at all. Besides, the Navy had no trouble flying the Mitsubishi G4Ms. As a side note, those would catch fire and even explode after a single volley. Meanwhile, the Ginga also had great potential as a night fighter. The engineers tried to pass an obvious hint by adding a gun sight to each aircraft. The JNAF got the hint and responded, "Your initiative is misplaced. We're already making the Tenrai. So what if it's still in the blueprint stage? Your aircraft was made to be a dive or torpedo bomber, so don't try to pass it off as something else." When the realization finally came in, it was too late. The Allies had already achieved air superiority. There was no time left for mass production or experiments with night fighters, and the Homare engines continued to torture ground crews. Later, in 1944, when Japan tried its hand at making jet engines, the engineers proposed the Tenga, basically the same Ginga but with 2 rocket boosters under its wings. The response was the same. No need, we're already making the R2Y2 bomber and the Kikka using jet engines. We've even finished the blueprints. After the war, Miki Tadanao discovered that railway companies in Japan were more than happy to employ his talents. Have you ever heard of the Shinkansen, also known as the bullet train? Miki Tadanao was one of its main creators, and this was his magnum opus that finally made history. The magnificent Ginga, however, only left a few dry lines. Every ground tech tree in War Thunder has infantry fighting vehicles, and each update expands the choice. That's why we think it's time to talk about how you can use IFVs efficiently when fighting tanks. Your choice of the most efficient playstyle is mostly defined by the weaponry your vehicle has. Using this criterion, we can divide all IFVs into 3 groups. Number 1 is machines whose main caliber is just an autocannon. Some good examples are the German Puma and the Swedish CV-90. Due to the caliber being small, their guns lose their punch at range, but in close combat, these IFVs can outplay tanks just fine. Of course, you should always try to find some ally with reliable armor when you attack from the front. But even if you happen to run into someone face to face, you can always try to hit their gun and then flank them while they're disarmed. Overall, flanking is a perfect tactic. You might want to learn your way around the map to be successful at it. Another great tip is to use the recon drone to find blanks in enemy defenses. The second group is IFVs with modest autocannons and anti-tank guided missiles as their main caliber. Again, some good examples are the German Marder and the South African Ratel 20. Their best use case is long-range combat, where guided missiles can truly shine. Their main advantage is high mobility. These machines can often get to any part of the map in a short time. The third group of IFVs has both strong autocannons and missiles, providing the widest choice of tactics to the player. Naturally, this means you can use either of the plans we previously described. We believe these vehicles play best in close-quarter combat. They can quickly disarm the target and finish it off with a missile. Now, firepower is crucial, but IFVs can provide extra value to the team by using their active scouting ability. Accurate intel on enemy movement can be the decisive factor in pretty much any game mode. That's why every enemy you mark is a small yet valuable contribution towards your team's victory. In addition to gratitude, you can use active scouting to get a sizable discount on spawn points required to use aircraft in realistic battles. Tell us in the comments what tips and tricks you learned while playing IFVs. Meanwhile, it's time for us to answer some of your questions. The first question was sent by a player called Pecas. How do I play howitzers like the PLZ-83? Hi, Pecas. We've already made an episode talking about howitzer tactics. It's The Shooting Range, number 292. Check it out. Feascad10 asks, what's the best loadout for the Kfir C7? Hey, Feascad. The best air combat loadout is 4 Python 3 missiles. For CAS, we'd go for the Zuni rockets and 1,000-pound bombs. Another question comes from a gamer. How should I utilize the Riz rockets on the BF-109F2 against other planes or even ground targets? Hello, gamer. They're not too efficient against ground targets, but you can find them useful when attacking bombers, although you'll need to use your eyes to aim, just like in real life. Cool Pro Player 360 Gamer writes, why does the J21A3 have CCRP? Hi there, there's no mistake here. The Swedish engineers did install this aiming system on the A21A3 in 1947 to drop bombs at a set point. And the last comment for today was written by Spectre Plays Games. Should we take the external drop tanks or conformal fuel tanks on the F-15C? Can the F-16 get conformal fuel tanks too? Hey, Spectre. Each option comes with its own advantages. The drop tanks can always be jettisoned to lighten the aircraft, while the conformal ones have lower air drag and occupy no hardpoints. We'd like to use this chance to remind you that we'll be adding conformal fuel tanks to other aircraft that had them in real life. That's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, and the next episode will premiere the following Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Subscribe and click the bell if you don't want to miss our next videos. Don't forget that petards aren't toys. Leave a like, share your thoughts and comments, and see you next week.